I am wearing my wealth coach hat. So I have been featured in the Globe and Mail, the Financial Post, the Ottawa Sun, just to name a few places. And I've also been on the front page of Investment Executive, where we talked a bit about more on the emotional side of money. I speak a lot about money, and I also wrote a book called Burn Your Budget, How to Spend Your Way to Financial Freedom. And I am the host of The Real Bottom Line, a podcast featuring entrepreneurs that are talking about their journey to entrepreneurship, the lessons they've learned along the way, and their technical expertise that they can share with other entrepreneurs to help them grow their business. But today, we are here to talk about a recession. And so what is the definition of a recession? Well, it can be defined as a sustained period of weak or negative growth in real GDP that is accompanied by a significant rise in the unemployment rate. So let's dig into, first off, what is GDP? It's an economist term. So if you haven't taken an economics course, you may not be knowing what that word really means, but it's about gross domestic product. It's measured at the country level. So as countries produce more goods and services, that number goes up. And if the numbers are, there's a fall in that, that means that it's going down. And so that's the negative growth, and that's what they measure. The sustained period is actually a 2-quarter period, or about 6 months, that the economists are looking at to decide, are we in a recession or aren't we? The Conference Board of Canada has actually come up with a new definition, which I think is kind of important that we take a look at. A recession is a decline in economic activity significantly below potential, impacting many sectors, and can last longer than a few months. And that's significant. So really, are we going to be in one? So let's take a look at what's going on in the world today. There is a lot. And this is all played into factors into, are we in a recession or not? Now, the interesting piece is I came into business 17 years ago, just before the last big financial crisis, the one in 2008. That time and the way I worked with clients has really shaped me. And so that environment where things were going down, the stock market was crashing, we went into a recession, it was bad. And once I realized there were things I could control and things I couldn't control, I had a much better outlook. And so when we look at all of these things for us, it's about the consumer mindset to some degree, but it's also about a whole bunch of other factors. So how did we get here? So when we look at COVID recovery, or at least we are acting like we're in COVID recovery, but think back a couple of years ago, and we did not know. We were in an environment of complete unknown. We hadn't been there. I mean, the Spanish flu happened 100 and some years ago. So were the lessons there still applicable? But really what we happened during this time frame is the government put a lot of money into the system to help save our companies, help save our livelihoods, and so that we would not default on things. And so that put a lot of money in there. When there's a lot of money, and also when we came out of the COVID recovery, there was a lot of pent-up demand. People wanted to buy stuff. When you look at how many car lots didn't even have a whole lot of cars in there, like, I think they should get creativity awards for how they placed their cars in the parking lot so that it would look like it was a little fuller than it was. And so some of that is effect of in supply chain. So the supply chain had a big effect on when we could buy stuff, when we couldn't buy stuff. And although the parking lots are starting to fill up now, a lot of people who are trying to get new vehicles are having to wait 3 months, 6 months. I even have some clients who have ordered some vehicles for their business, and they're going to have to wait over a year for those to come in. When you're in situations like that, when the supply is a little bit lower, that also can lead sometimes to higher prices. So you add that all together, and we're getting into an inflationary time frame. And that means prices are going up. The cost of goods are going up. You may have heard of the Consumer Price Index. These are things that measure how much those prices have gone up. So for example, in September, the Canadian cost of goods, inflation went up almost 6.9%. If you dug a little further, food itself went up 10 point something percent. And so that's really, really detrimental to the economy in the sense that at some point, you can't have prices just to continue to rise. So this is where institutions like the Bank of Canada or the Fed in the US, they enter and they're trying to tame the inflation beast. And so what they do is they raise interest rates, because by raising interest rates, it means the cost of capital is higher, and people, because now they have seen the higher prices, they have higher mortgage payments, they have all these different prices going up, they stop buying. And what happens is that is how the inflation starts to come down. So the interest rates themselves are actually a big part of how those institutions are fighting inflation. And in fact, are part of the things that can lead to a recession, to a contraction in the economy because of how big the interest rates are. And these institutions actually know that this could be a consequence of doing these actions, but inflation is so important to take under control that they consider it worth the risk. Typically, we know that we would come out of a period of a recession and go up. So they're okay with all of those things happening, and to some degree, but they know they have to tame inflation. And so that's why we're seeing interest rates go up. So that's all of that. Now, economists, much like weathermen and meteorologists, they seem to be the people that make lots and lots of predictions, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not, but we kind of look at them for guidance. What's interesting here, when you look at 3 different financial institutions and think tanks, their answers are all different. The Conference Board of Canada is 70 to 80% sure that we're going to be in a recession based on that prediction from before, or that definition from before. RBC is a strong maybe, but they think it might be weak. It'll start Q1 and then it will go away really quickly, assuming that inflation is tamed. And TD is kind of at a 50-50. So, what do we do when we have all this conflicting information coming at us live from all different parts of the world? It can be very, very disheartening when we look at all this information out there, and what do we do? So we've all heard the stories. There's different ways to come out of it. We hear these stories about you should spend all your money on marketing. And there's these stories of 2 or 3 companies spend a lot of money on marketing, and as a result, we're able to come out of a recessionary period, gangbusters, so far ahead of their competition. So Harvard Business Review in 2010 did a fairly robust research study. They actually looked at 7,400 different companies and researched 3 different inflationary periods, or recessionary periods, pardon me, back in 1980, 1990, and in the 2000s. They looked at the period of time 3 years before, during the recession, and 3 years after, to actually see what did the companies do, what tactics did they employ, and which ones came out stronger at the other end. So the interesting piece is, after all that, 17% of those companies that they started looking at didn't survive. They went bankrupt, they were acquired, maybe they went private, but they did not survive the recession. One of the other things they looked at is the mindset. And when we look at mindset, as humans, we tend to want to avoid pain. We want to find pleasure in things. And sometimes that actually, when we get into a recessionary time frame, will actually influence how we respond and what we do in a recession period, so that our businesses can survive or thrive. So Harvard came up with 4 different kind of strategies that people employed. And here's what it was. 21% did a prevention focus, 26% did a promotion, 29% pragmatic, and 37% progressive. So let's dig into each of one of these. The prevention focus is a defensive strategy. It's where we cut costs. We just cut wherever we can, as much as we can. It becomes the lens through which we look at everything. Will this cost me more money? Well, then we're not doing it. And so their research has shown that this actually wasn't necessarily the best approach, that it didn't actually allow those companies to come out in a better way, and they took them longer to actually recover from a pre-recessionary period. A lot of times when it comes to a defensive strategy, one of the things that people do immediately is just cut employees, cut. And so, when you think about it, when the time comes that we're growing again as an economy, you have to actually find people, hire them, train them before you can actually be able to ramp up again. The promotion focus, this is what we hear. I was actually looking for these stories because I'm an optimistic person. So this is kind of where I go is where can I spend my money best? Where can I market more so that it comes out better? Because, maybe marketing will be cheaper now and less people are doing the marketing, so I can stand out more. The interesting piece here, this is optimists. A lot of optimists are focused on here, and you're taking an offense point. You're going to go attack the market, if you will. The interesting thing here is that sometimes when you are too optimistic, what can happen is that you're missing telltale signs. Maybe your clients have been asking for something else and you're not giving it to them, but you're adding bells and whistles when they're asking you to cut features and reduce costs if you can. And so you may be, when there's a financial reckoning come, it might actually surprise you because of the mindset. When you get to a pragmatic focus, it's a blend. It's a blend of offense and defense. And it's really hard to compare with the progressive focus, but 37% fell into that category according to the Harvard Business Review. And that's when you take this optimal offensive and defensive tact. So we're going to focus mostly on that 37%, the progressive focus, and that is how can you best cut expenses, but yet still be looking forward to making good choices from an investment standpoint. So when you think about it and think about how will you prepare, I encourage you to think about what can you control. Going back to when I was in 2008, faced with a market that was declining, my second or third year into the business, and I wasn't sleeping. And I had to have a conversation with myself at a certain point where I'm like, listen, Wendy, you're not sleeping is actually not affecting the market at all. Hard to believe. And then I was able to focus on, hey, what can I control? I can control my approach. I can control how I focus on my clients. And I can also focus on how I've set up my mind to actually be prepared, and also being pragmatic and looking forward in terms of really doing the things that matter. So let's get into the 3 decisions. Decision 1, I'm calling it spend smart. The operational efficiency place is a really, really good place to look. Because the benefits of looking into this area of your business can carry forward. If you are able to reduce your overhead expenses, you are actually going to be able to carry that forward, even if we are or are not in a recession going forward. Because honestly, all these decisions we're going to talk about today, whether we go into a recession or not, they're just plain good business. So if we set ourselves up from a mindset perspective, we're going to act like there's one coming, and we're going to get everything in place so that we are in the best position to handle it. You're just going to come out ahead. And if it never happens, you're still going to be ahead. So operational efficiency is a big, big place where you can spend some time. And I'm going to talk about it in 2 ways. I call it stop donating and start shopping. Okay, so I wrote a blog post about this recently. And when I say donations, I am not talking about philanthropy. I am talking about those particular softwares, subscriptions that we have, other things that we're buying and we're no longer using. So this happens all the time. I'll sign up for a free 30-day thing, and I guarantee you it probably takes me month 2 or month 3 before I actually remember that it's there and I have to cut it. So if you were to go into your credit card statement, because this is where they all show up for the most part, especially the ones that are done monthly, am I still using this? Is it still providing the value I want it to provide? These may result in hard decisions. Is this software which makes total sense at one point not making sense anymore? Should I cut it? And so these are the things that will help you cut costs in a very, very smart way. The second thing is to think about shopping. I think all of us, when we set up certain pieces of our lives, are actually doing all the research. I'm going to use cell phone bills as an example. When I got my cell phone and researched the market, found the best deal, found everything, and it was a really good deal. Fast forward a few years later, is it still the best deal? Is there a better program out there? Is there a better way I could be doing this? I think we need to revisit these things on a regular basis. That could be our telecommunications. It could be our photocopier. It could be all kinds of different places inside your operation. And I really like to look at it as nothing's off limits. Everything needs to be relooked at. Now, one of the things, for example, I know in our organization, we probably pay a little bit more for our, insurance on our building, insurance on our errors and emissions, all those things. However, I also have added in, is it worth it? So if I'm paying a little bit more, but I know the service is better, I'm actually willing to pay that premium in most instances, or having a very conscious decision to say, you know what, that's $1,000 a year cheaper. And I know it won't be as easy at claim time, but that's worth it for me right now. We just had this conversation with our provider in the last couple of months when one of our policies came up for renewal, and the best rate had less service bundled into it, and we had to make that decision. So decision one, spend smart. You'll notice I'm not saying stop spending, I'm just saying spend smart. Decision two is all about focusing. And in the article from Harvard Business Review, it's all about your client. I mean, we all know this, but let's really go sit beside our client and understand where they're at. Are they more susceptible? Like if we do go into a recession, are the people you serve more likely to be affected by recession or less likely? There are businesses that are more recession proof than others. Think utilities. We still turn on the power. We still heat our homes. There's all kinds of businesses that don't get affected. And then there's others that get affected more. Know your clients, know what's the pressures and the pains they're receiving, and use that as you also analyze the things you're offering your clients, the products and services. Understanding what you offer compared to your client, and that famous phrase, what's in it for me, for them, right? Looking at your offerings from their perspective. If I know a client who works with me will increase their net worth by, $100,000 in a year, which we have done, is it worth spending the money on the product? Probably is, because it's much less than the 100,000. So knowing that stuff. Competitive response, understanding how are your competitors, if you have some, are adjusting to the market. What are they doing out there? Are they slashing their prices? In which case, does that mean you have to slash your prices? Knowing what's in it for your clients and knowing what they get in return can really help you understand how you have to respond to some of the competitive forces in the market. One of the things I would love you to do is actually dig into your product and offering numbers. And what I want you to understand there is, what does it cost you to deliver? So that would be, if you charge $100, but it costs you $20 to deliver it, that means that product is contributing $80 towards your overhead and the rest of your business. So look at all of your products and services. Which ones, based on the contribution, are giving the most to your bottom line? And do you have the capacity to deliver on those in a more scaled up fashion? And does it give you joy? When you look at these three things in comparison to your product numbers, it can help you focus in another way. I just did this exercise with a client of mine who does coaching for women in business. She had 5 different product offerings. And what we did is we went through and we did analyze how much did it cost her to acquire a client, not just in dollars maybe spent on ads or other things, but also in terms of how much time did she have to spend with someone before they bought the product? And then how much time did she have to spend to deliver on the product? We were then able to figure out what did she earn per hour to do that particular service. When we finished analyzing all 5 offerings that she had, one became so obvious because its contribution and its scalability and the joy she got from delivering it was so huge that we knew that was the winner. And then we were able to figure out, listen, you need to sell 100 of these this year to hit your top line goals. That allows her to really focus her marketing dollars, her attention, and her effort on selling those 100 units, because that was going to get her where she wanted. The other 4 products, no more bandwidth. If someone bought them, they could buy them, but she wasn't focused on marketing them or selling them. They became byproducts so that she knew if they came in, that was wonderful, but all the dollars and attention went to the one that was going to deliver her the most returns. So knowing your client and knowing your offerings will allow you to provide a great deal of focus on where to spend that money and where to invest that money so you can get the results that you want to. Decision 3, develop your opportunity filter. Reliable returns with a reasonable payback periods is one of the things that you kind of got to look at when you're looking at opportunities. You know, before or even during this recent real estate rush, people were trying to decide, should I buy now? Should I buy an investment property now? And, you know, as the market comes down, but interest rates go up, it's still a harder question to decide. So these are the things where you have to know what is important to you. What do you expect to get from an opportunity? And how do you analyze that to see if it's worthwhile? So maybe you have extra cash, and because the market has pulled back from a financial perspective, you're going to go, I'm going to invest in a plant. I'm going to buy some real estate. I'm going to buy more equipment so that when the market returns, or even during the down frame, I may not make as much money. I'm still going to make a profit, but I'm well positioned for when the recession, if there is one, is over, we're ready to rock and roll for the future. So those are kind of the 3 decisions I want you to think about. And that is spend smart, focus, 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 and develop your opportunity filter. And until you have the first 2 set up, I'm not sure I would go with decision 3, because decision 3 comes, you've optimized your operations and your spending, you're focused on the client, you know what they want, and maybe you've got opportunities because of that work you did in the first 2 that will allow you to take advantage of them. And remember, even if we do go into a recession, we always come back. And so this is a chart going way back to the Great Depression. And how you read it is that the red mark shows you how far down the markets came. And then how much did they return 1 year after, 5 years after, and 10 years after? So you can see that they do come back at, with varying degrees and how fast they come back, but they do always come back. I mean, even when we look at the COVID pandemic, which is the one on the furthest right, you can see it went down 34, and then in the 1 year period, it came back 75. So this is one of the other things I want you to remember. Next steps. The big one is decide to act. Make that decision. Make that decision that you're not going to be too pessimistic and not too optimistic. And find that fine line in the middle where you're cutting costs, but yet also investing for the future. And now what we're going to do is open it up for chat. I also want to make you an offer that if I can help you book a time in my calendar, we would be more than happy to have a conversation to see if there's anything we can do to help you with anything going forward on your business, and how we can help you put things together so that you can come out of the recession, if there is one, even better than before. All right. If there are any questions, post them in the chat or post them in the questions. And I am not seeing any questions right now. Well, Courtney, I guess I covered it all very, very well. Oh, here's a question. Oh, the chat is not working. Okay, can you do it? Can we post all questions in the Q&A section on your thing? And that was where we will answer those questions. I'll read them out loud and answer them if there's anything that anyone has. Hilda, do you have a question that you'd like to ask? Just type her in. Still thinking. That's awesome. Well, Hilda, feel free to reach out and book a call. We can chat about it. And for anyone else that's on the call, this is a 30-minute, no obligation conversation. If you go to the URL or you scan the QR code with your camera on your cell phone, it takes you to a booking page. And that booking page will allow you to book a phone call or Zoom call with me. Yes, Mo, we will definitely email you the webinar. What is the best way to communicate to our team we will get out of this? I think the best way to communicate is be realistic. Honestly, we don't know for sure if we're coming in or coming out, but I also think that you should communicate some of the things you're doing to actually make sure that you'll survive it, and that, you know, here's how we're going to maintain market share. Here's how we're going to continue to sell to our clients in a way that they'll keep buying. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, here, Carol. Yeah. Yes, let's look at the 100-year chart again, Carol, and the serious global events. I used to be much more in tune with the global events. However, what I did, or I came to a conclusion of, there's always something. There is always some sort of calamitous event in the world. There's Brexit. There is the Italian and Greek bond crisis. Not all of them are loss of life catastrophes like we're facing in Ukraine, but they're still catastrophes from a market perspective. And so I think looking at this from the long term, you know, there could be still some effects of the war that we're not necessarily going to have realized yet in terms of supply chain, potentially around supplies like wheat or things like that. So it's very important that we know that. But I know that even if we were to look at the markets today, they're down. They've already priced in a lot of anticipating that there could be a recession, and that's already priced in. Is it at the bottom? My magic 8-ball did not work this morning, so I cannot answer that question completely. But what we know is that it could still go down, but the chances are that it will make that rebound. It's just a question of how fast and when. These are great questions. If you have anything else that you want to ask me, I am more than up. Oh, strategy on. Okay, so Hilda, strategy on spending smarter. Cutting down your seats from 10 to 5, but dread the call and the time to connect with the big organization. Yes, that's one of those ones of deciding, is it worth it? So if cutting down from 10 to 5 is going to save you $25 a month, but it's going to take you 5 hours of your time to do so. And if you build out those hours at $200 an hour, it may not be worth it right now. Or it's one of those things, the strategy we employ is the have it on speaker while we're on hold for extended periods of time and continue to work away. So we will sometimes do that when we need an answer and we can't wait, but it's painfully slow from the supplier point of view, is outwait them. Awesome. So we went through this fast, we went through it quick, but again, I want you to remember, the economists are not agreeing on whether we're going to have one. In particular, when you look at one of the big indicators is usually a period of unemployment and things like that. And right now, you know, most employers are having a super hard time finding employees. so that even if that factor does come to play, it might actually just put us in a place where there's more equalization and people, you can find the people you want because someone else let them go. So the employment piece, I think my personal opinions were in for some sort of slowdown, and that from our perspective, it's how do we provide services to our clients that from a wealth management, wealth perspective, a CFO staff perspective, that will help them, personally get ahead from a wealth perspective, but also from their business. So we are going to send out this webinar by email probably tomorrow, so you guys all get a copy. If anything else pops up, let us know. Feel free to book that 30-minute consultation because I love learning about new businesses and seeing if I can provide any value. So please do so. And stay tuned. Our next webinar in this series will be in February, where we're going to talk to some couples in business, the entrepreneurial couple. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.